Welcome to Law Talk Live. I'm your host, Gina Goosmann, CEO, founding and practicing attorney at Goosmann Law Firm. At Goosmann, we work alongside business owners, leaders, and innovators who are building something meaningful and want to protect it, grow it, and lead it with clarity. This series is all about bringing you real-world strategies, timely insight, and perspectives from professionals who are in it every day. You are now tuned in to Law Talk Live. Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Gina Goosmann from the Goosmann Law Firm. I am a CEO and practicing attorney here at the firm, and I am really excited for you all to join us here on Law Talk Live here on LinkedIn. And I have with me a special guest, attorney at the Goosmann firm, Chris Johan. Chris, welcome to Law Talk Live.
Thanks, Gina. Good to be here.
And Chris and I are going to be talking about the Qualified Small Business Stock, also known as QSBS. And Chris and I were just saying we're going to try and refer to it as the Qualified Small Business Stock throughout this presentation and talk that we're having here today so that we don't get bogged down in too many acronyms. Lawyers love to get bogged down in acronyms, and we want to make sure everybody's following along with what we're going to be talking about here today. This is an amazing tool that can certainly help founders, business owners, and investors reduce or potentially even eliminate some federal capital gains tax. And that's really important when you're selling stock. I know I don't have a single client and I haven't met anybody yet who wants to pay more in tax than they need to. And so we want to dive more into this powerful tool. And the rules are a little bit technical, and that's why I have a technical attorney here with me talking about this. And the timing really matters when we're dealing with this as well. But Chris and I are going to talk about those details and walk you through some of those things that you need to know if you want to try and use this planning tool. Before we jump into that, Chris, I think it'd be great for our listeners and people watching to get to know you a little bit more. Can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Chris Johan. I'm in our Sioux City office. I'm an associate. Went to Creighton, graduated, wanted to do more school. So I got my tax LLM at Northwestern, and that's a year-long program where the only thing you do is tax courses. And then I went on to work at KPMG for a couple of years and did mergers and acquisitions, tax structuring. So things like this are exactly the type of thing that I've dealt with in the past. So.
And then you found the lovely community of Dakota Dunes, South Dakota.
I love it. It's great.
Chris and I both have homes in Dakota Dunes, South Dakota. And for those of you that don't know, since we're talking taxes, South Dakota is a no income tax state. And so there are a lot of business owners, investors, and professionals that do call Dakota Dunes home. And we're both excited to do the same. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this technique. And Chris, maybe you can just introduce it at a very high level, plain English. What is the qualified small business stock technique that we're talking about?
Yeah, so I think in order to understand it the best, let's go back to the beginning. So it was enacted in 1993, kind of right around the time that the internet started. And essentially what it does is if somebody invests in a company and they want to eventually sell their stock, the gain from that sale is excluded from capital gains, and the limitation is based on how much you invest. So it encourages a lot more investment into what sort of the tax code is driving as far as economic activity goes.
So this is not a technique that's brand new.
No, but it has been recently updated, which is good for taxpayers.
Okay. And when you say it's been recently updated, there was so much in that big, beautiful bill. Was this part of that?
This was one of the things in the big, beautiful bill, yes.
Okay. So July of 2025, the big, beautiful bill had so many provisions in it. I think it's like over 10,000 pages long or something crazy like that. And we keep picking out more pieces to highlight and make sure that people know about all these different tools and techniques. So what particular, with regard to this technique, who's it for? Who should be paying attention right now?
Yeah, so people who want to start a new business or invest in a new business, because one of the requirements is it only applies to the sale of shares that the owner has and has had since it was issued from the corporation itself. And that's another one of the requirements is only C corporation stock, minus a couple nuances that we'll exclude from this discussion for these purposes. But yeah, C corporation stock at issuance from the company itself.
So, quick question. Does a new company have to set up the business with this in mind when they set up the business?
No, but it's an important consideration. So, for example, the companies that benefit most from setting up the C corporation, despite the double taxation, is companies that want to reinvest their income into their company and grow their business, because then you have that exponential growth from the reinvestment dollars. And then 1202 rewards you at the end with the complete capital gains exclusion. So,
okay. So what type of business would want to do that?
yeah, so this is where we're kind of forced to get into the weeds here, because the business requirements are quite stringent and it only applies to certain types of business. So I have a list here. So the fields that it's targeting are trades or businesses involving performances of services, or where their assets are sort of reputational or skill. Those types of businesses are excluded. So
it's not for a law firm.
Unfortunately not. And if you read the tax code, law firms are excluded from quite a few generous tax provisions, unfortunately for us. But yeah, so the term is qualified trade or business, and the tax code defines qualified trade or business as a trade or business such as health law, engineering, architecture, accounting, actuarial science, things of that nature, or where the principal asset is reputation or skill of one or more individuals.
And those are all excluded.
Correct. And then there's also, just to be comprehensive here, banking, insurance, finance, leasing, investing. Farmers are excluded, unfortunately, mineral extraction, and then hotels, motels, restaurants.
Okay, so we got a whole bunch of companies that can close their ears now, and founders of those types of businesses and investors in those. But who would want to use this then? Who remains?
Everybody else.
Do you have any examples?
Yeah, so let's say somebody wanted to start, we'll say an AI company, and they've developed proprietary IP and whatnot. So although the job itself is quite technical and requires a lot of skill, the principal asset of the company is sort of the IP and processes there. So they would qualify.
Okay, so I think a lot about tech companies that would probably want to use this, right? So you said this was started in the .com era, but right now we're in the AI era. So if people are starting AI-based businesses, this might be something for them to pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and how about manufacturers, like going more nuts and bolts?
Yep, so manufacturers are another one that can get into this. Yeah, really. So there's a list of exclusions, and then anybody not on that list, 1202 is potentially for you.
Okay, software as a service, or anybody with a product. It's really, if you have a product, this might be for you?
Correct.
Okay, good to know. And so now we know what type of business this might be able to be used for. And if you're not excluded, then you're included. It's one of those types of laws. And you said it has to be a C Corp. Let's just go high level for people who might be listening and talk about what is a C Corp.
Yeah, so a C Corp is a tax term describing how an entity is taxed. So there's two types of entities that we deal with that are typically taxed as C Corps. So there's obviously corporations, which are per se a C corporation. And then there's LLCs. And LLCs, there's a lot of flexibility there because you can make an election to be either a pass-through entity like a partnership, or an S Corp, or a C corporation. So Yeah, so as long as you're a C corporation from the beginning, that's the important part, from the beginning, you would meet that requirement. But S corps are not allowed. You cannot have been any entity other than a C corp from the beginning to the point of sale.
Okay, so if somebody is an LLC and they're an S corp right now, can they convert and still qualify?
Unfortunately not.
Okay, so you need to plan from the beginning to be a C corp, which is honestly, I think it's kind of rare because most companies, I think, don't want double taxation, or most founders or owners are thinking about not wanting that double layer of tax. So you probably it's a business that you think you're going to have hyper growth and you're going to take investors' money and get started that way, and then hopefully sell the business after you've reinvested in it quite a bit. Is that the sort of structure that we're looking for when we set one of these up?
Yeah, so set one up with exit strategy in mind.
Got it. So I keep going back to Silicon Valley, but in the, what do we call ourselves here in the Midwest? The Silicon Prairie? I don't know. There's a term for that.
Yes, a Silicon Prairie is exactly right.
All right. So if you're a Silicon Prairie style business, this is something that you might want to be looking into. And you're trying to raise investment money from third parties. Is that really what we're diving into?
Yep. So the provisions really pointed at third parties, investors and whatnot, who to encourage them to put their investment in, because taxes really play a big part in investing, because that's your return there, and you have to take that into account. But under 1202, if you meet the requirements, you don't. So.
And when you reference 1202, what are you referencing? Is that an IRS tax code?
Yeah, it is. Statute 1202. Thankfully, no regulations, because those can be lengthy, but yeah.
Got it. What other requirements are there to be qualified small business stock?
Yeah, so only individuals, and then certain pass-through entities owned by individuals qualify as shareholders who can sell the stock. So for instance, if a corporation sells the stock of another corporation, they can't benefit from 1202 because they're not the right type of shareholder. Additionally, a qualified small business is a defined term. Requirements are quite technical. So there's two tests under that definition. Both have to be met to be a qualified small business. So one of them, so the entity requirement, C corporation, I said two, there might be more. So the gross asset test, so you can't be too big. So the One Big Beautiful Bill provision, it's at a cutoff at July 4th, 2025, as far as the size goes. So the assets pre-July 4th, 2025 can't have exceeded $50 million, and then post $75 million. And then after 2026, that number gets adjusted for inflation. But also be careful, because of the way that it counts, or the way that it calculates the gross asset size is not intuitive or common at all. It's kind of made up and interesting, but so come see us if you have any questions about that. And then, sorry, did you have a question, Gina?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of break that down a little bit. So one of the things is that investors themselves have to be either individuals, so not other big corporations, or they can maybe be like a LLC, a pass-through entity. Would that be allowed? So if I want to invest with using my LLC, would that also be allowed?
Yep. As long as it's, I think, let's say you as an individual, you're the only one who owns the LLC. I think it'd be beneficial for you to sort of check the box just to make sure that it's treated as a disregarded entity, and that it's treated as it doesn't exist for tax purposes.
Got it.
And then
so you got to make sure you have the right kind of investors to use this qualified small business stock. And so where you're getting, or for them to use it, could you have like a disqualified investor? So you got money from a big corporation. Would that make everybody else ineligible, do you think?
So that's a great question. So no, because the exclusion is on a taxpayer basis, not the corporate basis.
Okay, so does it help me as an individual investor? And then did I invest properly, either directly myself or maybe through a trust or through a single member LLC?
Right.
Okay, and then the next thing you talked about, some of the requirements was, is the qualified small business stock, is it actually a small business? And it sounds like there's some tests there, but in general, and now we're in 2026, it's like, does the company total assets, are they under 75 million?
Well, and it's really not even total assets, it's the adjusted basis of those total assets. So if you have a bunch of depreciated basis, that doesn't count towards your asset amount. And then where people need to be careful is where they have excess working capital, because that's a big trap for the unwary if they have too much. They're making too much money essentially and don't know where to put the cash.
Oh, darn. I hate when, the problem is making too much money.
I know.
But it seems to me like this would be a deal where, maybe you invested early and now they're going to sell the business and liquidate the business. And so my stock is going to get sold and they want to sell before the assets get too high. Is that kind of where this comes into play?
Yeah, so that can definitely play a part. But there's some pretty advanced planning you can do to try to keep that number low for as long as possible, which is a great problem to have. Congratulations, whoever has that problem. But yeah, so there's certainly techniques you can use to make sure that amount stays low.
Got it. So again, we're kind of narrowing in on some of the other requirements. Any other requirements to be aware of? We talked about a couple different tests. I think we discussed one of them having to do with the asset value, and the depreciated value. And what other tests are involved here, Chris?
Yeah, so 80% of the company's assets have to be used in the qualified trader business. So they can't be used outside of, or they can't be used in businesses in that list that I had kind of rattled off before. And if they are at any point in time, because you have to test every year individually, according to his assets, so record keeping is very, very important here. Then if it's more than 20%, you fail. And on that note, it's your burden to prove that this is a qualified small business. So record keeping from the get-go is very, very important.
So if you're trying to aim for this for your investors, you're going to want to set it up from the get-go and then have somebody, quite frankly, like you on board every year to make sure that you're following all these rules. Yes,
because there's some modeling. Because with some of these tests, there's some modeling that has to be done. For instance, for the assets, like what's the value, how much is being used in the qualified business, how much isn't. So yes, it's good to keep a close eye.
Then any other big requirements that we should touch upon before we start to get into? I feel like this is such a heavy lift that we're going to have to talk about why it would be worth it. But before we go there, any other major requirements that we should focus on?
Yeah, so the holding period requirements. So there's several different, times from when you acquired your stock as far as years go that have different rules that apply because this has been amended throughout the years. But generally, if it's before July 4th, 2025, and you've held it more than 5 years, 100% exclusion. And then after 2025, there's a graduated exclusion amount. So if you've held it for 3 years, there's a 50% exclusion from capital gain. And then if it's 4 years, it's 75, and then 5 years, it's 100%.
Okay, so this is not a quick turn investment. It's not something that, you gave the company, $1 million, and now 6 months later, you want your $1 million back, and you're going to get this big tax advantage. It's something that you probably had to be in it for a little while, it sounds like.
Correct.
All right. Any other requirements that you want to touch upon before we talk about benefits?
So no other requirements, but there is a gain limitation, which is the greater of at the moment, $10 million or 10 times your basis. So 10 times the value of what you put in, which is where the tax code rewards bigger investments.
Got it. So there's a limit on how much capital gains you can save through this program as well, but it's $10 million is your gain, or is $10 million your tax savings?
Savings, actually. Yeah, it's the excluded amount, and it's the greater of 10 million, and it's about to be 15 starting next year, or 10 times the fair market value of assets.
Okay, let's try and put this into some real world examples or some hypotheticals so that we can get a better picture of, wow, why do you go through all this work to become a qualified small business and for this sort of purpose so you can attract these investors? And can you kind of walk us through a hypothetical?
Yeah, so let's say you have $100,000 sitting around, or let's say, actually, let's go bigger. Let's go $1 million. And your nephew started a great business, and you're like, wow, I think this could go somewhere. Your nephew, here's $1 million. In 5 years from now, he sells it for $20 million. And let's say you own 75% of that, right? So you have a $15 million gain. That is at the cap of your limitation, and you now don't pay 20% capital gain on that amount.
Okay, so in your hypothetical, I got $15 million back. I invested $1 million. So I have a $14 million spread. And then capital gains rate is 20%. So that would be $2.8 million tax bill.
I can't do that kind of math right now.
All right. Well, I can't. So we're going to go with, I think it's a $2.8 million tax bill, 20% on $14 million. And so under this, I would save $2.8 million.
Yep.
Wow. So that is why people want to look into this program, right? For nephew to get wealthy uncle's $1 million investment to start this new AI company. And then for uncle to be like, okay, if we set it up this way, I'm going to be able to save a bunch of money in taxes, assuming I haven't hit my limit on tax savings under this program.
Correct. And it's worth noting that the limitation is per taxpayer, per company. So if you own, let's say you do that with 4 companies, each one has its own exclusion.
Wow. So wealthy uncle could be, maybe he has 4 nephews and a niece. So he gets to do it 5 times.
Correct.
Awesome. Well, I can see how it really could add up in a big way. First of all, that's a wealthy person that got to have such success on all of those different companies, but also to save all that tax money. And it seems like a really powerful tool when you start to lay it out that way.
Incredibly. And it's one of the most underutilized sections in the tax code, actually.
And I can see why, because it is complicated, right? And honestly, I don't hear many attorneys talking about this when they're helping people set up a company. Usually we're trying to, not have double taxation, but I think in the right circumstance, it's really smart to think about, especially if the business is, like you said, not one of those excluded kinds, and they plan to keep reinvesting, and really their goal isn't to pay themselves as much as they can each year from the business through distributions, but really it's an exit play. So we're going to have this high growth startup and hopefully sell it off in the, maybe in 5 or so years. And that will be the big payoff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What else should we be thinking about as we are looking more into the qualified small business stock program?
Yeah, so there's some planning that can be done. So typically the shareholder who's selling it, who wants to qualify for the exclusion, has to acquire the stock at issuance. So if you buy it from another shareholder, disqualified, doesn't count. However, there are certain, let's say, tax deferred transfers that can be done in estate planning or business planning, where it doesn't disqualify the at issuance requirement. So then let's say you have an estate tax problem. Well, you can actually gift some of your shares. And then because it's a per taxpayer limitation per corporation, if their holding period requirements are met, they also individually qualify for that exclusion.
Got it. I'm going to break that down for a minute for people that might be listening. So sometimes we're dealing with a wealthy client and they are also doing some estate planning. And part of their portfolio of assets may be this qualified small business stock. And today, the exemption before the federal death tax or federal estate tax kicks in is $15 million. And if you're married, you get to double it, assuming you do everything right. So it'd be 30 million, but let's just go for an individual, it's 15. And they want to set up an irrevocable trust, and then they're doing some advanced estate planning, or they want to do some gifting while they're still alive in order to reduce their taxable estate when they pass away in the future. It sounds like if they do those gifts, or maybe they make transfers into a special type of trust, that would not necessarily trigger the disqualification of the program?
Correct.
Okay. So we're layering in a number of complicated tools here, but I think that when you kind of break that down, that's super interesting as well, because wealth compounds, right? And a lot of times when you get to this level of planning, it's as much of keeping what these people have made by not paying more to the government. And these are some of the advanced tools that allow people to do just that and keep the wealth inside their family. It's very interesting.
Yep. And then the same concept applies to rollovers. If somebody sells their business and then gets stock in a new company, for those who maybe have exited already and are like, gosh dang it, there's still a chance.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about that. So let's go back to your example of uncle invests in nephew's AI business. And what is a rollover, first of all, for people?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So let's say that Walmart bought nephew's company. And instead of paying cash for everything, they trade Walmart stock for a part of the purchase price. So now you have the shareholders here, Walmart here, and then your original qualified small business, thank you, here. This stock still might benefit from the status that is continuing after that sale. So that's a rollover.
Okay, so Big Corp essentially invests in this startup business, and in turn for that investment, it might not be all cash. It could be some of the big company stock, and that might not disqualify the qualified small business.
Correct.
Is that fair?
Yep. So the status transfers to the new stock that you get. So
awesome. So there's a way in that path that you could end up with Walmart stock and still have it qualify as small business stock. That's amazing.
Privately held company might have been a better example, but yes, that is the deal.
Okay, so again, more nuances there. We're trying to keep it simple if we can, but what I'm getting away from all of this is it's an incredibly powerful tool and technique that folks that want to invest in startups could be using, probably aren't using near enough. Maybe you don't even know about it. But it seems to me like if this is something you want to do, it's very important to find a tax professional that can guide you through all these nuances and then help keep track of it along the way so that you don't end up disqualified on accident, quite frankly. And that's somebody like you. So this is the sort of thing people often wonder, like, why do you go to law school an extra year to get a tax LLM? I think that this helps illustrate exactly why you do just that.
Yep, creating value.
Creating value and identifying those opportunities that other people may not identify, and then being able to help continue along that path to compound those tax savings for people along the way.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Chris, that you wanted to touch upon today that we haven't talked about as it relates to qualified small business stock?
I think we've covered enough for today. I don't want to overload anybody, but if you have any questions after the Q&A, we'll say, come see us. Happy to have a conversation. So
that sounds great. Well, I'm going to just pop in here and check and see if we've got some comments. And let's see. How about one of them was, how about a construction business? Does that qualify? Thoughts on that, Chris?
Not on the excluded list. Construction is all good to go.
Very good.
Here's the craziness of tax law. So maybe it depends, right? Because if you're a one-man show, and your reputation and skill is the asset of the business, and then you leave, potentially not. But if you're like a Hewitt, where you're this giant conglomerate of construction services, then yes.
Okay, so and then you'd still have to meet the depreciated asset test. So probably not a Hewitt level, but yes, but more than a one-man band for a startup. So. Another question was about custom detail auto business.
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, so that's a really good question. I would say that's akin to the cloud services that I had referenced earlier, because. Yeah, so if there's gray areas like this one, people will ask the IRS to bless their 1202 transaction, like, hey, can I exclude this? I think this would land under that. Yeah, there's a lot of technical skill involved, but ultimately the product is what's being sold here, and that's the principal asset. So I think that would qualify.
Okay. And then we had a fun comment in here is Michael wants to know, Chris, should I hold or sell my Michael Jordan card collection?
Mike, how you doing, Mike? Good to hear from you. No, hold it for as long as possible, although the card market's super hot right now, so you might want to. It's actually probably a really good time to sell. So.
Oh, spoken like a true lawyer. You might want to hold as long as possible, but the market's hot, so you might want to sell. I love it. Great work, Chris. Well, thank you again for sharing all of your knowledge with us here today. And I want to remind our listeners that we have our next Law Talk Live on June 25th at noon with Ashley Krause, who is another Goosmann Law attorney. And we're going to be talking about South Dakota trust and why people go to South Dakota to form their trust. So thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. And thank you so much, Chris, for sharing your knowledge with everybody today.
Happy to help. Thank you.
At Goosmann Law Firm, we believe the right conversations at the right time can change the trajectory of a business, a decision, or even a legacy. You can connect with us here on LinkedIn, follow along for future sessions, or visit GoosmannLaw.com for more information and additional resources. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.